Good morning and welcome to the TBA 2026 Legislative Update. I'm Berkley Schwarz here with Brad Lampley and Ashley Harbin, the Government Affairs Dream Team for the Lawyers of Tennessee. And we're
That's
back
right.
with our weekly podcast.
The self-described dream
Yay!
team.
I'm trying to bring up the excitement level if you can't tell,
Yeah,
which is
and we are the dream team, Brad. I mean, at least me and Berkeley are.
Sorry
So,
for
you
those
know,
of you that fell asleep. I just feel like our energy was low during Bar Buzz, so apologies to everybody that watched that. So
Brad is
uh,
losing sleep
we're gonna
at
be higher
night
energy.
over
but
his energy on the bar
We're
buzz.
gonna be higher energy. I was just like maybe I don't know. I was like I kind of felt like we were buzzed or something. But anyway,
I
we
wish yeah, that might have helped.
had great questions for us. We just didn't. I don't know. It was like okay, I don't know. So
As
we're
our producer Hank said, though, it is informative, the
it,
Barbette episode. So
that it
check
is.
it out if you haven't, and you want to understand how all of this works, uh, generally. But yeah, so now the legislature is in full gear after last week breaking because of the snowstorm.
In Berkeley, you have power.
I do.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
You want to share with everybody I mean, everybody in Nashville has been through a lot. You have been through a heck of a lot.
Well, no more than anyone else. I still have friends who don't have power. It is crazy. I live in a very wooded neighborhood, hilly, and Nashville, and the trees just fell left and right. And we have trees down. We had trees down blocking our driveway, so we couldn't get out, blocking both sides of our street anyway. And so we did not have power from a week ago Sunday until Monday night. So
Mhm.
that was tough, and I appreciate all the basic necessities that we have. We stupidly did not put all of our stuff outside in the freezing weather, so we had to throw away like two refrigerators and freezers full of food, but we're rebuilding it. It was a good excuse to clean out all of that
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, and the legislature was closed. Because of that, they extended the bill filing deadline by like a couple of days. But the last week and a half have been a blur, have been a little nuts, and I'm kind of glad to get back to business as usual and get back on, track with
So
our
real quickly
real
before we
talks.
get to the legislature, how many trees do you still? Because we drove around. I live in northern Williamson County, which got it pretty hard, but not close to when you go up Hillsborough Road into Forest Hills and Green Hills and that area. Your area right off Granny White, it looked. I mean, it was like a bomb went off in that area that I just described. But then your street looked to be the worst that I had ever seen. I mean, it was like a Category 5 hurricane had come through or something.
It really is. If you walk down like my street, my house right now, it's like wood piled up to here on the curbs, of
Yeah.
just endless wood, stacked wood of trees. And we still have three trees down that they're working on. They're basically triaging, trees that are like going to do damage to people's houses or in the roads. Or, I
Mhm.
mean, our across street neighbor's mailbox was completely squished. We had a friend whose car was crushed. And then the plumbing stuff that came after that was insane. I was just talking to Hank. Their ceiling collapsed into their bedroom, so they're having to live in their living room. There's so many stories of so many people. And also, I mean, for what it's worth, it was amazing to watch the Nashville community come together, everybody help each other, work things out. We had people coming through with, cutting down trees just because they had the tools to be able to do that. I don't even know if they lived in our neighborhood, but just so that we could get through, before the official, folks could come and deal with it. So there's been a lot of complaints about some of the way things were handled, but all in all, the people, everything, it was great. I was on a big group text with my neighbors, which we don't usually do. So that was kind of fun and entertaining. We hope to keep that up. So anyway, crazy ice storm situation, but that's in the past. And today's a new day, and we're
You did.
here to talk about legislation affecting lawyers in Tennessee.
Well, and this week, as it always is, sort of you always have the kickoff to session, and then session really gets going though after the State of the State address. And Governor Lee delivered that on Monday night at the Capitol. Really, actually, to me, one of the more poignant speeches I've ever seen. There were a couple of times where, first, when he talked about the First Lady, it was a very reflective speech, let me just say, because this is the governor's last one. This is year 8. And so, and there's really not a graduation ceremony for governors, because once, you got the inauguration of the next one, it's all about who that one is. So in a way, this was kind of the last address, certainly to the legislature and more broadly to the people. And so I'm sure he'll try to find other opportunities, but to reflect on the last 8 years. But there was a lot of that Monday night at the Capitol. And long story short, a lot of reflecting on the last 8 years, all the accomplishments they made. But then, of course, he got to the First Lady, and there was a long pause there where he had to gather his emotions, and obviously those that followed. The First Lady had a really serious bout with cancer, but looks like she has come out on the other side doing really, really well. So, a walking miracle in some respects. And then he talked a lot about the issues that you would expect, like economic gains, educational freedom, all those things. Crime in Memphis and how that's down 55%, more troopers in Shelby County. Talked a lot, by the way, for the lawyers that didn't get to see it, about things that, rural health care specifically, and how governmental interference has kind of gotten in the way, in his view, of some of the gains that they could make in the area of rural health. So he used that to segue about the CON laws and certificate of need, and the need to get rid of that. So that'll be an active issue that we'll be watching, and all you healthcare lawyers out there will certainly all be keeping an eye on that. And then talked a little bit about economic development and nuclear, and then finally at the very end, gathered himself again. I mean, it was about a 10-second pause as he was addressing the legislature about how the last 8 years have been the highest point of his professional career, his professional life. And there was it was very, very poignant. Actually, I texted a couple of people in the administration after it was over, and I was like, this is almost too good of and too sincere of a speech to be a political address. So what did you think?
No, I agree. I thought it was very emotional.
Yeah.
Just seeing him, and again, to your point, the pause with the First Lady, Maria Lee. And she dealt with that cancer. I think that was 2 years ago, Brad, and I think she's been in recovery since then. And they have such a special, close relationship, and he's always put her first in everything. Every one of his statements are typically, Maria and I, or, me and Maria. He's made that a point that he's put her out there as Tennessee's First Lady, and really appreciates her thoughts and takes, her thoughts and opinions into consideration when he's making choices for the state of Tennessee. But it was very emotional, and I don't think that we see Lee that often. So it, humanizes it a little bit more, as opposed to making it strictly political. I agree with that.
Berkley, I haven't even asked you about your evaluation of the speech. You may not, I don't even know if you had power to have a chance to watch it, but sorry.
No. I did watch it. I'll admit I didn't watch it in real time, but I watched it the next day, and I agree with everything you said. And I don't think there were also any big surprises there. I think we were expecting a lot of that, but yeah, I thought he was great. And it's always interesting to see someone who, the governor when he's leaving, and the transition, and who the new governor will be, and how that will impact us and legislation and the legislature. And it'll be interesting to see how all of that comes together.
Well, and to your point, there weren't a lot of big ticket items either. I mean, there was obviously discussion about we'd like to expand the voucher program, as everybody calls it, the educational freedom scholarships. We'd like to expand that, because I think there's 50,000 Tennessee kids on the waiting list right now to get some. So that's part of the thing that they want to do. He talked about increasing funding for state troopers and that sort of thing, to continue the momentum in Memphis. But, you really, there weren't any sweeping new initiatives. And I think part of the reason for that is because, frankly, you never want to say it's a victory lap. And certainly he didn't give any of those messages. He talked about we need to press ahead and don't stop and don't get satisfied, said all the right things, but the governor's accomplished pretty much everything on his list. I think, Ashley, you tell me if there's anything
Yes.
still left.
No, I think that's right. He came out, I remember, this time, 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. I may be off on my math a little bit. But I mean, his big thing was criminal justice reform, which he got done the first 4 years of his term, and then school choice. And he's accomplished much more than that. But I'm just thinking from a campaign's perspective, those were two very important topics for him, and he got that done.
Yeah.
So to see the expansion of school choice, I think there's been conversations about that since they had almost 60,000 applicants this year. And so, to his point, these are what parents are asking for. The way that they showed up applying, and I think the number was 54,000 applications. That's huge because last year only 20,000 spots were funded. So doubling that makes sense. That's what Tennessee parents and families are wanting.
Yeah, and I think he talked about he said, as Maria and I, getting back to your theme, Ashley,
Yeah.
because he did say that. He said, as we were driving around on this journey 8 years ago, looking around, I remember at one point he gave a speech just talking about mailboxes, like, I wonder whose mailbox that is, what those people, what their story is, and that sort of thing. He's talked about that over the years, but he said what came, really to me was people just want a good job, a good school for their kids, and a safe place to live. And those are the things that they want. And so he steered clear of a lot of the hot button controversial issues that you might see, on some of the talking head shows. I mean, he really steered clear of that. It was just about economic development, education, safety, and look what we've done and look where we're going as a state. So anyway, that was that. And of course, it segued Berkley to the next day, which was the big budget presentation. I'll go ahead and not bury the lead. There was nothing in there about professional privilege tax, but I will say, I don't know that I saw any major tax cuts in there. It just really, the budget, it's almost like a workmanlike type budget. If you had to, it didn't have the bells and whistles. I mean, of the big initiatives outside of what you would typically expect with the, increase in funding for, the educational freedom scholarships and so forth. But, I think there remains a very, I wouldn't say a nervousness, but you're not going to accuse the state of free spending, because as it was pointed out in the Senate Finance Committee, I think by Chairman Bo Watson, even though the tax collections of 22.6 billion, that was the number I wrote down, were up 2.3% for this fiscal year over the previous fiscal year. I think the point was that growth is not outpacing inflation. And so as you look at some of the graphs that they've got, you got this trend line about where you have with the typical pre-pandemic trend line and where that was headed in terms of just the state's growth and the overall budget revenue and so forth. And for a while there was a spike in all that in terms of collections and the overall, just the overall general outlook. Everything has kind of come back to the pre-pandemic level now. And so it's getting closer to the trend line, which means that I think in the minds of the real fiscally conservative folks that are really watching this, it's like there's not a ton of money out there to spend on unnecessary things in their minds. So I think, to the extent that there's any kind of big initiatives that are going to be recurring expenditures, that you may not see a lot of that, or you may see a real reluctance to do that because that's just, it's not where they are right now.
That's right. And I think that, it is funny to me that, we were so not funny, but, we're just on to the next. Indigent representation is a massive issue. They're working on that now. And now we're focused on professional privilege. And this year sounds like may not be the year, but who's to say next year we can't get it done? So,
well, and on that note, Berkley, there is, and I know you want to talk about legislation, so forgive me for dragging this part out, but there is a group, there is a coalition that we certainly are part of that is going to be hammering that message in all session long. We've got probably the groups that are there probably comprise 7 or 8 days on the Hill, including ours. And everybody's going to be talking about getting rid of the professional privilege tax. There's going to be, op-eds and letters to the editor, and there's going to be, a letter to the General Assembly and the governor. But again, in an election year, last year of an administration, that sort of thing, I think it's going to be a multi-year process. And of course, then you've got the whole uncertainty about the state's budget outlook, and of course our reliance on sales tax, which always makes things a little bit of a challenge. So anyway, that's it. It'll certainly be a topic at TBA Day on the Hill, as it should be. We'll be hammering that message in every single meeting that we have. You can argue that there are some things in the budget that maybe should be moved around. This is just me talking. I'd love to take the $20 million they're going to put in the rainy day fund. I think that's what they were going to do, and allocate that to a partial drawdown of the professional privilege tax. But again, you're talking about something that would be a permanent effect of the tax base on the revenue side. So anyway, we'll keep hammering away, but that's where we are.
Exactly. So speaking of TBA Day on the Hill, if you don't have it on your calendar, that is Wednesday, March 18th. We're really excited about it. It just gets bigger and better every year. The day is followed by our big shrimp reception, and you can't register yet, but I know they will have registration on the TVA website soon. But put that on your calendar, and we hope to see all of you there. It's going to be combined with T-ball this year, so I think it's going to be especially well attended and have just engaged people, and it's going to be especially good.
And it will be an absolute zoo at Cordell Hall that day. There's at least 3 major days on the Hill, and those are just the ones that we know of. There may be more. So
yeah. So you'll meet people. Yeah, meet some new people, meet some other lawyers, meet some other professions, and it's always exciting and interesting. But the meetings will already be set up. All you have to do is show up. You'll get your schedule and attend. So quickly, I will not spend a lot of time on this. I just want to sort of hit the high points of the bills that TBA is running this year. No surprise, again, this year we have an adoption bill. The adoption section is really good about going through and seeing what needs to be done. This bill, we worked with DCS on it. It's pretty short and straight. It just deals with foster parents who have had physical placement of a foster child for 9 months or more. It allows them to receive information and pleadings and that sort of thing when a termination of parental rights filing has been filed by whether it's the guardian ad litem or DCS, but just provides that information and those pleadings to the foster parents, because that's a lot of information that they would like to have to sort of just know where things are going and what's happening. We also have a probate bill once again, and we're working on that. We've got our sponsors are John Stevens and Johnny Garrett in the House and Senate, or Senate and House, and that bill just kind of deals with a bunch of different issues. It's kind of, it's sort of in flux, but basically it just talks about the Heirs Property Act and, when real estate needs to be sold and how that would work, within the estate and their obligations. It also removes a reference to the Tennessee inheritance tax because that was repealed. So that's sort of a technical change. And it also just changes the word should to shall in a petition for conservatory and making it mandatory. So it's really not, from my understanding, big changes. I think that first one is the main substantive change. But yeah, we'll be working with everyone to hopefully get that bill through. And then the last bill that we have is our family law legislation. And that does like 6 different things. It also has technical changes and cross-references different things to sort of correct some issues that came up because of bills that passed last year. It also grants juvenile court judges the discretion to award attorney's fees, just as judges in Chancery Circuit and General Sessions courts can do. It requires unmarried parents in juvenile court to attend parenting education seminars, just like it does with married parents, and a few other things. So we will list the bill numbers with the links in the comments on this podcast so you can actually go through and read and see exactly what those bills do. Throughout this process, sometimes a lot of this can be changed and amended, and so we'll sort of just see how it goes. But we're already starting to work on that, in addition to the defense that we play on all the other bills that are not TBA bills, but affect, Tennessee lawyers, and, already starting to work on some of those for
to your point, Berkley, over 600 bills filed this week. So we're still waiting through those. And there's a lot of them I flagged for TBA. So we'll see. We even had one yesterday we were working on. So just
absolutely
welcome to session. Here we go. February.
That's all right.
Least favorite month of the year, February. Well, months, because March, I loop into March is sometimes worse than February. So
yes, it can be.
And they're saying early, they're hoping to get out earlier this year, even earlier than before. So that sounds good if you're looking at just the amount of time, but it also feels like everything is just on what I kept saying a few years ago, fast forward, where it's hard to keep up because so many things are happening at once, and there's not a lot of time sometimes for conversation, negotiation. Half the time everybody's like, we'll just forget it. We'll do it next year.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, there's my phone's ringing right now from another lobbyist talking about legislation.
They're trying to rope us into another issue, right? That's what
all the time. Yeah. So other than that, I feel like that kind of wraps it up. We try to keep these things short and sweet, for you guys, if you're driving into work or home from work or whatever you're doing when you're listening to our podcast. But we appreciate your joining us and hearing, listening to what's going on. And we will be here next week and the following weeks as session proceeds through April.
And you're going to go out and chainsaw everything in your backyard right now, I take it. So
yes, or oversee the chainsawing, maybe not the actual chainsaw.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you don't want me to have a chainsaw. I don't think that could be extremely dangerous. But yeah, we'll let professionals do that. Okay, well, thank you guys for being here. Thanks to all of our listeners, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.